What is up? Hopefully you guys have a wonderful day. Back here with some more Resident Evil gameplay for you. And today I'm going to be talking about the recent released gameplay footage of Resident Evil Requiem that's finally being viewed to the public. But you can only play if you're at the Gamescom event. And there's a lot to talk about. But one thing I do want to make clear, I'm not going to go over every single solitary, single detail thing in existence. Because some of these things I just really don't care about personally. Like matter-of-fact things. Like, oh, there's a green herb. You can heal with a green. Yep. Duh. You can heal with a green herb. Yep. You can always do that. Oh, you can use a lighter. Yeah. Lighters have been a part of Resident Evil since the beginning. Oh, you can use items to interact to open up other things. Yeah, these are matter-of-fact things. They're not things that are worth having a big, lengthy discussion about. Let's get into the things that really matter. And the things that matter to me the most. So, let's talk about the other big elephant in the room. Not the big one, but you know what I mean. So, this gameplay demo, which I was wrong, I incorrectly predicted. I thought they were going to be doing the prologue, where you're following Elisa as you're trying to be escorted out of the hotel. This is when you're already going back there again, and you basically wake up upside down strapped, and you get out of there, and then you're eventually being hunted by the monster. So I was wrong about that, but I want to talk about the monster and that big can of worms there. So, a lot of people have been pointing out, have been made a comparison towards, but there's a high likely chance that this big grotesque monster is more than likely not Lisa Trevor, but Elisa Ashcroft herself. Now, once again, a lot of people have been pointing out the design of it. I've heard a lot of people make this comparison before the gameplay footage. And a lot of people playing the gameplay footage have said that this is definitely Elisa. If this is to be believed to be true, number one, that's really messed up. And number two, I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of it. I'm not the biggest fan of that for multiple reasons. Number one, I'm not a big fan of you bringing back a character that has been shown off in 20-some years just to have them basically dead and then turn like that. I mean, you have to at least give me some time with them and not like a barely, prologue for a few minutes or however long it takes. I'm just not the biggest fan. It's kind of like you're just saying, hey, we're using this character to basically be martyred. But the potential from it is definitely there because with the exception of Lisa Trevor herself, we've never had a really deep emotional connection from a transformed monster being an older established character. And on top of the fact that you're going to play her daughter being hunted by her mother, and with the fact that you probably ultimately at one point got to put her down, that's definitely going to be a very tragic and emotional moment when it does eventually happen in this game. So that's messed up. So there's a lot of potential, even though I'm not personally a fan of how it's doing it right now. I wish we could have more time with Elisa Ashcroft. I never thought they'd bring back an Outbreak character, but more than likely that is Elisa herself. And the monster is very grotesque. It's very huge. How it moves, how it's always hunting you. It's unpredictable. It definitely is something that's going to leave you very much, especially in that opening segment, which is all the demo shows on it, especially when you don't really have a means to fight it other than staying in a light source, since it is very vulnerable to the light. It gives me similarities of the final boss in Resident Evil 0 where the light was its ultimate weakness, and I wonder if that will be a tie-in or possibly a connection or just something that's just a coincidence, but only time will tell. The other thing I wanted to talk about with this whole gameplay footage is the fact that I really like how they really demonstrate how this might be one of the most immersive characters we've ever had the joy of playing with in terms of Grace, because Grace is very reactionary to the environment. And what I mean by that is, as you watch her in the gameplay, she's always heavy breathing, and the closer the enemy gets, the heavier the breathing is, as well as sometimes maybe seemingly like hyperventilating. She definitely is very reactionary to the environment, to things falling down, to the enemy getting closer towards you, as well as a big thing, which definitely I've heard a lot of people make a comparison to, is that when you are running, like normally, just moving in the hallway, normal run speed, but when you're being chased, there's kind of like a little burst of speed with you, but so much a little bit of a burst that it actually will make you stumble, if not fall down altogether. And it's giving those Haunting Ground vibes, which I wonder if that's another game that'll ever get brought back again. And that's definitely something very different towards Resident Evil ever. I mean, we've had those little stumbles before, but more when you're trying to get past an enemy, you kind of brush them off, but not in terms of where you outright stumble and fall down. So I wonder if that'll be like a mechanic that's triggered based on, how much Grace is experiencing, the fear of what's chasing her. Is it something that we can account for? Is it random? Only time will tell, but it's definitely interesting. As I said, she's very reactive to her environment. I mean, really reactive. We never had a character like that before, react that distinct to everything going on with them, which is going to make the experience very immersive and really gives the potential of Grace to be one of those all-time great first experiences in terms of a true horror experience, which is something that I always hear fans always say all the time, I want to go back to the horror. But I'm really interested to see how deep they're going to go with this, because the thing with Grace is, as we noticed through the trailers, she's got her own problems even before being stuck in these events. She's very kind of like disconnected and introvert. She kind of is very socially awkward. Seemingly has a deep longing to be with her, around her mother, but even with her, she's kind of like weird in her mannerisms. Even after the whole event, when she's at her laptop in the FBI, she's very weird. So I wonder how much the story is going to play upon that, how much the fact is going to have going through with gameplay. But I'm really interested how they do this through the beginning and to the end of the game, the whole experience. But from what I've seen, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how it progresses and stuff. So I'm really interested in that. I also bring up this plot point because we've had mention in the early trailer talking about how Grace's blood is the key, and was that maybe one of the reasons why Elisa was being hunted in the first place, and is that why she ultimately looks the way she does, is this monstrosity? Is that something just unique to her? Is that something Grace can do? And ultimately, what is it they're trying to accomplish? Just me speculating, but, asking questions to hopefully maybe get some speculative answers of what direction they're trying to go towards. I also would like to talk about, obviously as I saw some of the gameplay, the transition between first and third person. And for me personally, it's the hardest thing for me to discuss because it's only when you have it playing in your hands you really can know how it feels. Because that's the hardest part to do, is describe a survival horror game, because it's only when you got the control in your hand you can really feel. But I've heard some people say they prefer first person, and some people say they prefer third person. But once again, we have options. That's never a bad thing. And watching, similar gameplay sections with different points of view, I think is just going to increase replayability. And maybe you have certain ones that you prefer more than others, but I don't think either way is a bad way, because having them is just going to give you more options. And having more options is always a good thing in my book, so I don't see how it's a bad thing. So who knows? Maybe they'll actually have that hidden third option of fixed camera angles. That would just, I hope, make everybody happy. But maybe one day it'll happen. Maybe one day, but that'll definitely be a big day. But the gameplay is, like as I said before, it looks interesting. I'm interested to see how they do the whole reactionary horror with Grace and how deep they'll go. And in terms of also, give Grace a break, for goodness sakes. I mean, of all the characters, she has to have the most messed up, first half an hour, maybe ever, of any Resident Evil character, even topping that of Ethan, because at least with Ethan, he went in there, and granted, he didn't have any training, but he basically, he had to fight his wife, but at least he went in there with a purpose. Grace kind of had no idea the first time at the Rainbow Hotel what she was getting into based on the intro trailer, and then forced to go back to the scene of crime where you watched your mother die, and then seemingly having to flee from your mother looking like that, the way she looks, which is just horrifying. 10 feet tall, coming from the ceilings of rafters, got those xenomorph-like qualities a little bit in terms of how it maneuvers about the place, and then eating corpses. That's definitely the stuff of nightmares, and that's definitely probably the worst 30-something, however long it takes to get to that point, you can have in a game of any Resident Evil character, because at least the other ones, they had their training and had to go through all that. But Grace, man, they're throwing everything at her. So I'll tell you what, she's definitely going to have to earn her stripes here, because they're not pulling their punches with that. But overall, the only bad part I can really say is we don't get a chance to play it. That's the part that sucks the most. We can only watch it, because with horror games, you have to play them to really get the full experience, understand those feelings. You can't get them from watching. That's more than any other genre video game. But as I like to say, that is my opinion. I want to hear your guys' opinion. How do you feel about this whole gameplay demo? Were you most impressed with the whole, how Grace is so reactionary towards everything? Are you shocked that Elisa is supposedly this big monster? And how do you think that's going to play forward with the plot and the story if it remains to be true? And where do you think they're ultimately going to go with this whole story of the game with Grace's blood and maybe the reason why they're going after Elisa Ashcroft in the first place and how it ties it all together and brings them all back to where it began again? Let me know down in the comment section down below. But thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video, and hopefully I can see you guys back in the next one. Thanks, and I'll see you all later. Peace.